What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new, my name is Evan and I make videos about hot stocks, dividends, and options. So if that interests you guys, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. So in this video, we're going to discuss if NIO has kind of hit its top and whether this electric vehicle surge is going to slow down, and if all these electric vehicle companies are going to drop because of this slowdown. I'm also going to take a look at some of the numbers for a couple other EV companies, including Li Auto and Xpeng, so make sure you stick around for those as well. But before we jump into that, you can see that NIO today isn't really up or down from yesterday. They've kind of been all over the place today, and they're up 0.73%, but that's just as of right now, because a couple hours ago they were down 1.2%. But for the most part, they pretty much maintained since yesterday, not really up or down very much. So this article from Bloomberg is titled "Why the Tesla Surge in Chinese Electric Vehicle Stocks Might Be Over for Good." Now, I'm not sure whether it's going to be over for good or not, but that's kind of what we're going to go over in this video, and you guys can kind of decide for yourself. And when I'm referring to this surge that they state in the title here, I'm more referring to just this super hyped up price like Tesla has had in the last few months. I'm not saying that NIO or these other electric vehicle companies won't continue rising, but I'm more discussing why they won't just continue skyrocketing like they have, or whether they will continue going up. That's kind of what we're going to go over. Also, before we get into it, if you're wondering why there's this white bar at the bottom of the screen, it's because there's this ugly subscribe button, so I just overlaid a white bar over it in post to make it look better. It's basically trying to get me to sign up for 3 months of Bloomberg access. So just kind of ignore that if you can. So now let's get into what you guys came for. And the first thing is that both NIO, Xpeng, and Li Auto all lost around 10% in this past week. And this article is up to date as of September 9th. And so they've all lost around this 10% mark, but it's mostly due to Tesla dropping, because Tesla wasn't actually added to the S&P 500 for those who don't know. And so the price of being added into the S&P 500 was likely already factored into the price of Tesla. And if it was added, it probably would have gone up more. But I think the majority of the share price was already factoring in that it was going to be added. And then when it was declined to be added, you saw that it took a pretty sharp dip, both Tesla and Apple. And there was also some news about this bank called SoftBank, which apparently bought a bunch of calls on Tesla, and then they got out of those call options and made a bunch of money, which ended up really raising the stock market. Theoretically, this is what people think. And then when they bailed out, that's when we started to see the market decline in the last week or so. And if you're thinking that one bank doesn't really have the power to do that, well, when you invest billions of dollars at a fraction of a share price because you're buying calls, you can really sway the market one way or another. So I think this had a big effect on the market, at least recently, and this big run up that we've had. But even though all three of these electric vehicle companies, NIO, Xpeng, and Li Auto, even though they dropped around 10% this last week, they still didn't drop as drastically as many other companies like Tesla and Apple. So they are kind of fighting against the market, and that's a good thing to see. If they don't really go down as drastically as the market is, and they can kind of hold their own, then when the market goes up, they should really start going up. But all three of these companies also are currently unprofitable, and they only deliver a few thousand vehicles a month. So you can see that NIO in July delivered 3,500, Li Auto delivered just under 2,500, and Xpeng delivered 2,300 almost. So NIO is obviously leading the way between these three companies, but those are still very small numbers compared to other companies, especially compared to Tesla, because Tesla right now, they kind of rule over China in terms of car sales and in terms of being the biggest and best electric vehicle company. Now, a lot of people would argue that they're not the best, but they definitely have the most sales and they've delivered the most vehicles. And I think at least people in the US would choose Tesla over NIO if both vehicles were in the US. Because another thing to keep in mind is that the lower end Teslas are significantly cheaper than NIO's vehicles. And I think NIO has an average vehicle price of around $51,000. And one of the cheaper Teslas I think is around $38,000. Now sure, you could argue if you buy this cheaper Tesla, you're not getting as nice of features as a NIO vehicle because they're more expensive and they should have more features, but I wouldn't even argue that. I wouldn't say that they necessarily have more features. If you look on the inside of a NIO versus a Tesla, you can see a pretty big difference. Now, some people would say that a NIO vehicle is way more luxurious, but a Tesla vehicle is much more minimalistic. So it depends on what you want. So one other reason why this surge of these recent EV companies could slow down is because all three of these companies are trading at about 5 to 7 times their estimated 2021 revenue. So to put this into perspective, that would be equivalent to what Tesla was valued at 5 years ago, when it was in a similar development stage. Now with that said, there could also be an issue with this slow change from normal gas-powered vehicles over to electric vehicles. Now the Chinese government is still nurturing and they're still supporting these electric vehicles, and they have been for the past decade or so, but still over 95% of vehicles sold in the nation are still fueled by gas and fossil fuels. So it's hard for these newer startup, and I say startup, but they've been around for a few years, but I would still consider them startup companies in terms of car companies. But when you take these startup companies and they're just not delivering enough vehicles, it's hard for them to really make an impact, at least right now. And with a lot of people out of jobs that can't pay for a vehicle, let alone rent possibly. So right now is just overall a pretty bad time to be a car company. But I'm not saying that any of these companies can't make it. I'm just saying because of these reasons, they might not just continue going up like a lot of people expect. For example, a lot of people are predicting that NIO will hit like $100 by the end of this year. And the only way that could really happen is if they were just hyped up, much like Tesla was, and somewhat still is hyped up. But that's pretty much the only way they would hit that $100 range in the next few months. I think it's more realistic to say around the $30 to $40 mark. And this is also kind of an interesting chart here. If you take a look at this, you can see that this is like the predicted sales for all vehicles, gas, electric, and plug-in hybrids. And you can tell that there's a pretty upwards trend from around 2025 or so up until 2040 for electric vehicles. And throughout that time, gas-powered vehicles are declining. Now, obviously, this is just an estimate, but I think that the electric vehicles will be more of an exponential upwards trend, not just a steady line. And I think gas-powered vehicles will be somewhat of just a downwards diagonal trend down. But I think what this chart is kind of showing is that if these newer electric vehicle companies can kind of outlast the next few years and then get into these bigger number of deliveries, that's when they should support these bigger share prices and when the company should be worth quite a substantial amount more. So what do you guys think about NIO and this recent surge that they've had in the last few months or so? Do you think they're going to continue going up at this rate that they have been? Or do you think they've slowed down for good and they're going to just somewhat trickle upwards? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Also, if you guys made it this far into the video, let me know of any companies you want me to cover. I've had suggestions for Xpeng and Li Auto, and I can definitely go more into depth on both of those companies if you guys want me to. So just leave a comment of what companies you want me to cover, and I'll be sure to make videos about those if enough people want me to. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you back here in the next one. Bye.